Hey, everybody, welcome to episode. That was the worst intro that we've ever done, I think, in the history of the show. But welcome to episode 28 of Tactical Crouch, the competitive Overwatch podcast where we don't exclusively talk about Overwatch League, so stop leaving comments on YouTube about it. But we do mostly talk about Overwatch League, so I understand why you get upset.
Could be some confusion.
Could
Do
be.
I have to go to Contenders Wikipedia now?
Yes.
No.
Contenders Wikipedia. By the way, you know that name. Or that voice is super recognizable, and of course
I'm
the
not
name as well.
super. Matthew DeLisi, that's not me.
Is this how it's gonna be?
Yes.
This is all right. Okay, I'm gonna have the boo button and the crickets button ready because I will boo a guest. I booed a guest before. I'll do it again.
You said it was the worst intro of all time, so I had to go join in with.
Join in the self-deprecation.
To be fair, yeah, it's just like piles on. Doesn't let me think out loud. But yeah, episode 28 of Tactical Crouch, of course, with Volamel and Yiska every week. Good to see you guys, but special guests Reinforce this week, looking good. Bed is. I love the red pillows, by the way. That's like.
It's some color.
So I have to ask you, did you pick out the red pillows?
Yeah.
That's
I have a red
impressive.
blanket, to go with it.
Having that accent color is super important.
It's
Something I learned from my wife. The fact that you know that it's brilliant.
Big brain.
I don't know what to say. I like red.
It's true.
Feels good.
What's that picture above your bed?
It's fan art from a World of Warcraft map, which is Coldridge Valley, which is a starting zone for dwarves and gnomes. In World
Oh, okay.
I'm a big World of Warcraft fan, and I spent a lot of my time in that zone, and I just find it very visually pleasing.
I just re-rolled a tune on World of Warcraft. I re-upped my subscription. I'm back in it, leveled with Katie. So my wife, Katie, just got her level 120, first level 120 yesterday. So,
wow.
Well, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I'm not too much about the current iteration of World of Warcraft.
So he's
But
I
can't. Yeah,
Fair
World of Warcraft Classic.
excited then? Are we
are
excited about the beta news?
Are you gonna get the classic? Play WoW Classic?
Yeah, I had to take care of my career as well, so we'll see how hard we go. I understand now what I played World of Warcraft when I was like 10, 11. And back then, people were like, "Oh, people are losing their lives. It's so dangerous. People lose their jobs." And now I'm 23, and I'm like, "Yeah, I sort of understand how World of Warcraft ruined some people's lives, and it's about to ruin mine. So looking forward to it."
Yeah, that's it.
You're
Sign
looking
me
at
up.
the product of it. Hello.
Yeah.
Where do I sign? Yeah, exactly. Haikun reminds us so politely. WoW podcast now. It's not. This is an Overwatch competitive Overwatch.
We're
podcast.
allowed to go on tangents. I'll break out that hammer. I got a sword equipped.
Joe, that's your one. All right. So, that's your one tangent for the show, though. You sure you want to spend it on WoW? You sure?
I'm all in, baby.
All right. Well, let's before we do, let's do a couple pieces of housekeeping. Make sure to follow the show on Twitter at Tactical Crouch, as well as listen to the show anywhere where you can download podcasts, whatever, iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Google Podcast. It's everywhere, and of course, it's on YouTube as well. And we're live streaming on Twitch. We actually had an interesting conversation come up on the Reddit thread in competitive Overwatch this week about being more consistent with our times, and so we've got a plan for that. So stay tuned. Thanks for the thoughts and the feedback. Yeah. I think it'll work well for anybody. But first, I do want to talk Reinforce. You've kind of got this fancy new role in Overwatch League. We want to know more about it.
Sure. Yeah, can I go on another tagent first?
Yes,
go for it.
You said you have a really fancy, and then I just keep waiting for you guys to point out that I'm wearing a Lunatic High shirt, but no one has picked up on it. And this would be the podcast where people know and acknowledge it, and I'm just... Come on, guys.
That's a Yiska and a Volamel thing. You can blame them right now.
You want to go on a tangent? When was the moment that you decided to pull the trigger? When were you like, you know what? I'm a Lunatic High fan now. When was that for you? Was that after APAC? Was that APAC Season 2? When did you kind of hit that peak fandom?
Well, I didn't want to buy the jersey when I was actively playing against them. and competing again. But then when I progressively got worse, I was like, well, Miro was a pretty cool guy, so I got a Miro jersey because he sort of set the meta. And I was really garbage at Winston back then, so I sort of tried to pick up on his style, and his play style helped me a lot at improving. So I was like, yeah, I can be a Lunatic High fan, and I sort of bought into the FOMO, the Lunatic High FOMO at the time. So
yeah.
Anyway, yeah,
Where
my
are
new
they
job
now, by the way? Yeah, your new job. Let's talk about your new job.
Yeah. Let's talk. I was thinking about Miro playing Apex, but let's not talk about that. My new job. Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of things this season, but let's talk a bit about my weekly routine, what I do.
Yeah, let's do that.
For example, this week. Yeah. So one things I helped set up within the company this year is that we have a weekly research packet for the production and the talent team and everyone involved with the Overwatch League. So every week, together with a person named Matt Mercell, who we hired from Blitz Esports, I like to believe. Yeah. And also Ben Troutman, who's the legendary stats guy for the Overwatch League. Together with those two, we put together a weekly research packet, which is about 50 pages long. It has info about all the matchups, stat leaderboards, schedules, past matchup results, storylines and headlines, and just delving deep into stats, delving deep into stories. So
does it get depressing when no one from the crew reads that in full? I remember doing that for Contender Season 0. It was like, oh yeah, I remember that one factoid of those 50 pages. Like,
well, I feel like I gain a lot from it myself because I reflect on it. So that's a good way to deflect that question. I feel like I gain a lot from writing the packet, yes. But a lot of people have said that they like the packet and it's a good reminder for all the games, etc. So I'm really happy about it. It looks nice. I can't show it to any of you guys.
I was going to say, I would appreciate the out of that packet, by the way.
If you need, that'd be nice reading.
No kidding. That would be very interesting, yeah.
That would be too much pressure on every week sending out a packet. Look, I can't even tweet without Reddit going insane. How am I supposed to put 50 pages together without Reddit losing its shit? So, I put that together.
Fair enough.
With those two other guys. And then on game days, I act a bit as a Overwatch consultant, if you may. I've been helping the observers, for example, transition from tanks to DPS. But I do not actively observe, and I do not actively direct the observers, so to speak. But I've given a lot of feedback, notes, suggestions for how it can improve, etc. And I'm really happy about how the observing was this past weekend. Obviously, it can't be perfect because of the human element. But I think overall, I'm happy with week 2 of stage 2. When it comes to all these DPS compositions, it's all over the place. There's Sombras, there's Tracers, Widowmaker, Soldiers. There are DPS heroes all over the place. So I'm pretty happy with the progress we've made in that department. And then to round things out, I also act as a bit of a spotter, I think the term is, or a role, where I sometimes call for the picture-in-picture cameras, the ultimate zoom-ins and those kind of stuff we use in the broadcast, the map overlay. So about 50% of the time we use those elements. I'm the one actively giving the call to use those elements to try to improve the broadcast. So I do multiple of things, but I'm sort of like the Overwatch consultant, and I release that research packet every week. So I do a lot of things within the company.
It feels like I keep hearing this, especially from the broadcast team, very often, that everyone has 3 shoes at least to wear. I know Captain Planet, he does the stats.
Shoes? Do you mean hats?
Hats?
Yeah. I think he means
that's
hats,
a German thing. Yeah, okay. But so I think Captain Planet does, of course, he writes articles. That's one thing. And then he also does the stats and then prepares them for broadcast and whatever. And then also some other stuff. It's it's interesting that the company allows people to, fill in where there's need. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, I think that Captain Planet is a bit unique as well, because he's the ultimate stats guy within the company. and that means that he has a lot of responsibilities to help everyone with the stats, because he's the only one who can actively like dig and understand everything. But the most important takeaway is that he loves doing it. And so it's like, I'm pretty surprised every time I come into work and Captain Planet is just like euphoric about his stats and like some new thing he worked on, and he's just so happy with everything that I'm just like, you really love this job. And he does so many things within the company, and he's so happy where he's at. So I'm a big Captain Planet fan after working in production this year.
Yeah, it's good.
I am too, by the way, just for the record.
Yeah,
we all are Captain Planet fans.
Yeah.
very much so.
Do you feel like, are there any, we had kind of discussed earlier on that there was some like perhaps misconceptions. Do you feel like that should help clear any misconceptions about your new role, or do you have any other ones you want to address?
No, I wouldn't say there's any more misconceptions. I think the observing one was like the main one, because a lot of people thought I would take over the role that Jason Baker had last year, where he's like the director of the observers. That's not really true at all. I'm not directing that in that way. So when we have good observing, you shouldn't really credit me. You should credit the observers. But if you see that perhaps they have some new philosophy that you guys don't understand, then maybe I had a suggestion which led somewhere. So I'm a small part, and I'll appreciate praise and credit from Yiska or Peak whenever I can. It's always fun.
Do you think there would be value, for instance, even for the observers to read your package? Because sometimes, especially during meta switches, I think it can be very hard for people that have specialized in a different way to immediately stand metas. Also, let's not kid ourselves, like narratives should probably also shape which player you're observing from, first person, or whatever.
Yeah, so between stages, I did a lot of research as to what teams were playing in scrims to sort of like prepare them ahead of the meta, which helped them a lot to, grind out a philosophy about what they wanted to achieve in stage 2. And then on game days, I also try to actively tell them what the story is going into each game. So for example, if we're going into a halftime where our talent want to highlight like a specific player or two specific players, a specific matchup, I might inform them during the game and say like, hey, we might focus on these two players down the line on our broadcast. Can you help shape that narrative? And that also goes for like key players in specific matches. Like if Crystal subs in for Hangzhou,
right,
that might be someone we want to focus on, because that's a pretty big storyline given what happened last week and everything that came out of that camp. So I do inform them about like key players and what our story wants to be, but there's also a bit of, it has to be objectively good observing. We can't just cater to the story in that regard. So
Certainly.
So I tell them like what the story might be, and then they make up their own mind whether they should cater to that story or if they spot something going on somewhere else. And we sort of try to nail down like the best observing, mediating between the two factors. So
yeah, certainly.
It is something we do.
Right, you kind of need to, otherwise you form narratives where there aren't, and you miss like big plays, and then that could inform a new narrative building. That's a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'm interested. What did you say in the meeting towards Atlanta Reign and Washington Justice? How would you describe that match, and how would you set up that narrative?
That's for this Sunday, right? No, that's going.
No, that was last week.
That was last week.
Last week Sunday.
I wanted to say this after you, but I'll let you go first, which is essentially like, it's hard to get storylines for some matches, right?
Yes.
But some storylines we frequently started to use is like, how is Baby Bay fitting into Atlanta? Another one is like, where is Dako? It's like, how is FRD pulling Dako's shoes? And so when you get to those matches, it's a lot of like wishful thinking as well. It's like, is Washington Justice improving? Can they beat Atlanta Reign? Like, is there still one opportunity?
Yeah.
And then Corey sort of shaped the narrative of that match per se, because he had such an amazing Widowmaker play on Busan for like 2 minutes. Very valuable 2 minutes. And that sort of shaped the story by itself. But it's hard sometimes. Like, I think we have Valiant Florida something this week. You know, like some matches are just harder than others. Valiant Washington, right. That's right. So it's like that match would be like, is Valiant improving? It's like, well, they lost narrowly to a Gladiators team that looks a lot better, but you know, it's harder in that sense.
I think it's even not that hard to sell the race to the bottom, but what it probably is very hard is like if it's Shock against Guangzhou, it's like,
where it's just an obvious like
90% 4-0. Like, how do you sell that? That's so hard.
I think today's matches specifically are like this is like a rough day.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
because it's like all the top 4 teams versus not so good teams. Vancouver Dallas will be good, but I mean the rest is like
super one-sided.
Yeah. So you know, what can you take from that? That's a challenge in itself. But because we have Captain Planet working on his things, he always has some insight. And then it's a lot of like philosophical ideas about sorry, not philosophical, but like hypotheses. I can't even talk. But you get the point.
I get you. We get you.
So you sort of have to have fun with those matches and sort of looking forward to the future and try to gain some knowledge from every matchup, because we don't have a lot of matches like this year. Like I think on Oversight they mentioned that like, we've only seen Houston Outlaws play like 8 times this year.
Yep.
So it's hard to like understand what's going on with the Houston Outlaws and how they're shaping their play, etc. So every matchup we sort of have to try to get some new knowledge and try to shape our future narratives. So even though the matches are objectively rough, there's always more information we can extract moving forward and try to improve on analysis in that regard.
Sure. When it comes to being slightly cynical, like looking back at season 1 with your job as now kind of a consultant / spotter / man of many hats, are you kind of happy or relieved that you didn't have to kind of shape the Shanghai Dragons narrative for last season because of how just messy they were and how difficult it would be to kind of pose a storyline other than just like, is today the day?
Well, I mean, back then we wrote a lot of the stories ourselves. So, I mean, I was pretty heavily involved with, you know, how we wanted to talk about the Shanghai Dragons. And, you know, there's some things we learned. We learned a lot from that because at some point you have to be like, we can't talk positively about the Shanghai Dragons anymore.
All the time, at least.
All the time, anyway. There was like one time they gave, that was not me, but they gave Dia player of the match, where it's like Houston or something, even though they lost. And it's like, sure, that's a good one-off, but we can't every week just be like, the Shanghai Dragons looked better last week. This player specifically is starting to shine. It's like, you can't do that. That's just not... what's the word I'm looking for? That's not genuine, you know? And so I think we learned a lot from Shanghai Dragons last year. And I think this year we're a bit more, I don't want to say harsh, but when it comes to teams like LA Valiant, Washington Justice, I think we've been more open about, you know, there's a Watchpoint segment like, come up with some trades that would benefit both teams, you know? How should Washington Justice move forward with like their team? Like, do they have to make changes? That kind of stuff. So it was not the most fun talking about Shanghai Dragons last year, but it was a big lesson going into this year. And I think we've done a lot better of a job talking about those sort of bottom feeder teams so far.
Last thing on that, do you feel like you and the talent have kind of created a little bit more structure in that sense, where you now have like this packet to kind of read over and, you know, get ideas from? Did you guys kind of have that same resource last year when obviously you were on the desk with Crumbs and whatnot? Like, was it more of just kind of grassroots, like you guys can do it on your own, or was there something from on high that was given to you guys? Like, this is what we want you to talk about. Is that something that you can even talk about?
Well, I will say that the research packet per se is not like the be all end all.
Sure, of course, or just ideas, stuff to talk about. Sure.
But I will say this year, our talent is spending a lot more time talking with each other and discussing about storylines and trying to like iron things out. So going into our broadcast every week, everyone are sort of on the same page, and maybe the weekly research packet sort of helps in that regard, because it helps people, or helps remind our talent about what our storylines are, what players we're focusing on, etc. So in that way, I'd say that this year it feels like the talent in that regard is a lot more on the same page, and that helps, for example, ease the transition between the casters to the halftime back to the casters, because they're all on the same page, and it's not like, the casters want to talk about Muma and the halftime wants to talk about
somebody completely different, and it's disjointed.
And then it's like, we came back from halftime and they forgot to mention Dante, and it's like it's all over the place. So I'd say this year specifically, we're spending a lot more time talking with each other and being on the same page, and I think that helps elevate the analysis and what we talk about on the broadcast overall.
Dude, I'm not even kidding. I would totally buy a book of.
Yes,
all
I was going to mention that.
We would totally do that.
Yeah, like a book of just your guys's, at the end of the season, if Blizzard wanted to monetize your research notes and like sell it for $50, I'd probably buy it.
Yeah.
Well, you just gave me a business idea.
Go for it.
It's a long off season. It's a long off season, man.
It's cold. It's lonely. If you need some extra cash, you might want to hit up a publisher.
Yeah, I mean, if I sell one copy, I've already made more than I do on Medium. So
there you go.
I might as well. There you go.
There you go.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
So there is something that we need to talk about. There's an elephant in the room that we knew would be coming into this show, and we were we didn't think that we would quite bring it up, but we feel like we need to bring it up because you are among power ranking royalty, if you will. And
it's not a power ranking.
You can deflect all you want, but the fact is that somebody did some whatever
correlative
analysis,
rating analysis
of this, and right now your power rankings aren't doing so hot. And so number one, I just wanted to let you know I'm here if you need any advice. I'm just kidding. don't come to me.
Are you the best?
No,
I think he actually is. I think he was the
dumbest person on this podcast by far.
But you parse that information like nobody's business, homie.
But for some reason, I'm higher ranked than these two.
I think he scored the highest out of us.
No, Reinforce, you know how that is. Like whenever you bet back in Sweden, you bet on a World Cup. Who wins that pot?
Yeah,
some bullshitter always. Without fail.
Croatia's gonna make it to the grand finals.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Come on.
How dare you? It's like, I mean, I made some
bold
knowingly bold picks. It's like, because to me it was end of season rankings. Yeah. I went on a limb sometimes.
We'll redact that and cut it out of the show, by the way. Okay. So you can yell all you want. No, I'm just kidding.
End of season rankings. There you go. Now you can't.
Here's another question. Yeah. Where are those prediction thingies you did with the sideshow?
Oh yeah, like the big brain.
So that was actually pretty time consuming. And I realized that we just picked the same matches every week. And I was like, it's not really worth it if we're gonna pick two different teams every week. It's like, and also I was up like 3-0, and I guess he just gave up. So I was like, man.
Oh,
there it is.
Dropping some shade.
Yeah.
Well, now we really know who the superior analyst is. So, I felt comfortable just like putting down that project while being in the lead.
There you go. Cool all your head.
Yeah,
it's true.
Smart man.
Can we move on and not talk about rankings?
Yeah, we can move on and not talk about rankings. Let's talk about last week a little bit. There's some interesting results coming in from last week's Overwatch League matches, and one of the big ones is the LA Valiant defeating LA. Previously, Overwatch League's only team without a win, like fixing to be Shanghai Dragons Season 1 2.0. Atlanta Reign also lose. So Atlanta Reign have obviously gone through some transition and transformation here with the presumably unexpected retiring of DeFran again. The retiring. Is that what we would call it?
Was the
Yiska?
first one really a retirement?
According to like the twit longer, I would say so. Like, I just don't like it. I don't want to do this.
See, if Blizzard can retire Heroes of the Storm, they can retire DeFran.
Woohoo!
Oh man,
That's something. That's something.
That's the soundbite. Now use the soundbite.
Yeah,
You have a hot take soundbite.
both of the Heroes of the Storm players just stopped listening to this podcast. So,
Oh,
All two of them.
I knew a lot of those guys.
And they're all playing Artifact now.
okay.
I actually knew a lot of Heroes of the Storm guys because I used to be a Heroes of the Storm observer. And
I didn't know that.
when their game, quote unquote, died, they were like, "Do you think we could get into Overwatch?" And I was like, it's an uphill battle for sure to try to become an Overwatch pro. It's hard to transition from a MOBA into Overwatch, I'd say, in that regard. So that was a bit of a sad Twitter DM conversation. Just like, "Do you think I could go pro in this other game?" And I was like, "No,
Maybe
no, you had your time in a lot of big prize pools, and now it's over."
Yeah.
Feels bad, man.
All
Right
right.
there.
That's what feels bad, man.
Big feels bad, man. But let's talk about Valiant defeating Atlanta. There's obviously a few things going on here. Number one, not LA, Atlanta's transition, having Baby Bay coming in, DeFran going out. Let's talk about that first. Reinforce, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you feel like Baby Bay played this last week, because to me, it actually, his Zarya especially was something that I was, kind of potent. But then again, it was against the Valiant. But it was kind of intense.
Well, oof. Like,
You could
I
disagree
was
about
not too much in favor of the pickup initially. And I understand that, of course, Brad has a history with Baby Bay, and he sort of knew what he got with Baby Bay. But I don't know if that was like a desperation pickup, or if he like sincerely wanted Baby Bay in the lineup. But I did not like this pickup. Everyone knows what type of player Baby Bay is.
Of course.
Like, great individual skill, very aggressive. We learned last year. But he.
Come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think his Graviton surge usage
Not good. It's not been great.
good.
I'll say it
So
for you.
it's interesting here because I want to be fair. Because looking at the stats we have available,
Sure.
he deals a lot of damage, and he's actually pretty high in a lot of our categories we use to rank things in. Specifically, hero damage, he's pretty highly rated in. But then his Graviton surge efficiency is way down there. And sure, Fury kind of ruined it for him. And I think if we remove that match alone, I think his stats look a lot better. But even so, I think that Atlanta sort of suffers from not having the best team atmosphere, and not really being able to adapt a style properly. And to me, in my mind, it's going to be hard for the Atlanta Reign to sort of find a new style after DeFran left with Baby Bay in the lineup. I would have preferred to see them pick up perhaps some lesser known player that has a lot of potential down the line and sort of try to build on something rather than try to be good now by getting someone that has a lot of individual skill in Baby Bay,
Definitely.
but doesn't necessarily have perhaps the peak potential in my mind to compete with these top teams. And so, you can look at this pickup and be like, yeah, he's providing a lot of damage done, and like it's not necessarily his fault that Atlanta Reign are underperforming. Where's Dako? What's going on with Kodak and Dogman? They're playing every other matchup. It's like there's a lot of problems, but I don't think Baby Bay in that regard helps this Atlanta Reign team. And And so those are sort of my thoughts on this pickup.
I like the way that you kind of frame that, though. I think that's one way that I haven't heard it immediately framed. A lot of people just go, well, Dufran was good and Baby Bay is not, so therefore Atlanta sucks now, right? And I don't think that's very nuanced, and there's not a lot there to it. And I think the way that you frame that was good. Do you think that because it feels like, okay, from the outside perspective, it feels like Atlanta was built kind of around Dufran in one way, right? You play off of him, he kind of sets people up, or at least he's the focal point of a lot of their plays. When you add in Baby Bay, is this them trying to kind of maintain that same style with somebody who is pretty vocal, I'd say, just talking to some of the coaches, at least last season, very vocal, almost too much so. Has a mechanical skill, doesn't have to have an import, you don't have to work on a visa. It is kind of an emergency fit. Do you think that they were trying to maintain that same style and it just hasn't, necessarily worked out because of this uncomfortability?
Sure. That's definitely probable, that they just wanted to replace Dufran. But the interesting thing here is that Brad said on Oversight that this team was built in mind if Dufran was ever to go. They said that even if Dufran leaves,
that is true.
This team is gonna be okay. And Dufran was just like the cherry on top, But as it stands, that's definitely not the case, which sort of makes me question what Endlayer is doing on this lineup. Are they just not playing to his skills? Sure, Endlayer might not be the best Zarya, but we've seen a lot of teams have success playing other DPS heroes. So in my mind, I would sort of try to cater to Endlayer, knowing that you pick this guy up and believed you could have a completely good, well-rounded 6-man roster with this guy. Because I'm not even thinking about Dufran and what he contributed to this Atlanta team. If you truly believed that this Atlanta Reign team would be fine without Dufran, then you must have had some confidence in what Endlayer could provide to this lineup. And so I'm sort of confused in that regard, why they were so quick to just pick up Baby Bay and not try to find a new style without Dufran by themselves. And then I believe you said something else, but I forgot about it.
No, I think you kind of covered most of it there.
Yeah, someone in the chat, Vermilion, brought up that it's a very emotional team. But I think we all know, and I think Baby Bay know, so this is not necessarily like flaming him, but he's a very emotional player as well. Yeah. And he has tendency to perhaps tilt, going back to the Kungarna days even. And so I'm like, is this the emotional player you necessarily want to replace Dufran that perhaps wouldn't be as satisfied in game if you started losing and things weren't going well? Wouldn't you perhaps want a more emotionally stable player to start building around? And so you would have an easier time transitioning from Dufran into a new lineup. I think that they sort of made a mistake in not considering the potential atmosphere within the team if they needed perhaps 3-4 weeks to start rebuilding in that regard. So I think this was a missed opportunity and a bit of a slip up from Atlanta.
Do you think that they had much time to make this decision? I don't know if you have any insight, but is this something that you think maybe happened over the course of a week, whereas maybe a lesser known player you might need a little bit longer,
a little bit more time to kind of build,
implement them into the system?
Yeah, but sort of my take on that was, why are you so quick to make the decision? Do you really if you trusted Endlayer to provide something to this lineup?
That's where I wonder if things maybe at the beginning or towards the middle of stage 1, things were going very well behind the scenes, and then once Dufran started to kind of make notions that this wasn't for him anymore, they start to practice with Endlayer a little bit more and maybe this is going back to kind of tying it full circle with Daco. Where is he? Is that part of the reason? Are there things going wrong behind the scenes? Is the dugout not great? What's going on there? Why was it positive at the beginning and now we're making these kind of last second changes?
And I will say I don't expect Endlayer to be a great Zarya.
Sure.
I don't know a ton about this player, I will say, but I know that he has sick hit scan capabilities. And so if you need to get him into the lineup, then perhaps don't play as much goats. Try something else. Try to mess around. And that's very controversial. And
sure,
I see Yiska moving around, and I
agree.
Yeah, I'm just a bit scared when Yiska starts moving around.
He starts. Oh, here we go.
I'm like, given the Houston Outlaws discussion as well, it's like you can't just change your team.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You know,
Not that quickly.
there's a lot of things going on here, and I don't really agree with the way things were done.
Yeah,
That's fair.
So I think for Atlanta, they got the wrong player from the shock. I think the player they should have wanted is Nevix. I think Nevix solves a ton of issues. Would solve a ton of issues for them. Next up, player on the tab would be Rice, 1J Lee. That is someone I would absolutely demote one of the Zen players at this point.
So
I don't think they're.
I love the idea of Nevix, but do you think it's actually realistic for a player like Nevix to want to step down from a top 4-ish team
I think
to
so.
go play?
Not
in
really
Atlanta?
his call though.
Can
is it?
start.
Yeah, I think I agree
Not
with
his call.
Reinforce, not his call, but I also think that if you can start, I think that might be something that players are interested in.
I mean, that sounds like something that Baby Bay would be interested in.
Sure.
Probably in part why he's there.
Definitely.
I think a lot of teams would benefit from Nevix.
100%.
Not even Atlanta Green, like a lot of teams would.
Yeah.
He's waiting. He's just waiting to be bought out. I'm telling, like, there's a lot of teams, like you said. I think he could probably make even a DPS comeback if he really wanted to. And like season 3, a team wanted to be like, hey, Nevix, we want to bring you on. You have like this crazy flexibility. Let's just see what we can do. Let's adapt to the meta when it comes. Like, we'll be meta agnostic, as Brad said. So he could do it all, I think.
Can I go on another tangent?
Go for it, my friend.
So,
you're going to get the full screen camera for this tangent. Yeah.
I have a bit of a emotional connection to Nevix, given that he was my former teammate, but also because he's Swedish, right? Mm-hmm. And I have this dilemma in the NBA as well, because there's only one Swedish player in the NBA, and his name is Jonas Drebko, and he's a bench player for the Golden State Warriors. And so I go like, sure, the only Swedish player in the league, he only sees like 10 minutes of play every NBA game. That's not a lot for an NBA player. But he's on the Golden State Warriors, right? He could win a ring. He could be like the first Swede to win an NBA ring, you know, at the end of this year. And so I'm like, do I want to see more playtime out of the only Swedish player in the NBA? Or would I rather have him win the entire thing, right? And make Sweden proud? And that's the same dilemma I have with Nevix, where I'm like, would I want to see one of my best former teammates and a successful Swedish player in the Overwatch League play every game? Or would I rather have him on the bench on San Francisco Shock, where he could be like play a map in the 2019 Grand Finals, you know? Yeah. So I have a big emotional dilemma in this. So I'm like, yeah, Nevix, can you go to like some other bottom team? Or like at the same time, you're doing really well for yourself on the bench on San Francisco. I'm like,
was it Fissure's move away from Spitfire that talked about the head of, or the tail of a dragon versus the head of a snake? Is that the term? Yeah. So basically, it's like, do you want to be the tail of this big powerful dragon, or do you want to be the head of this less powerful snake kind of thing? But it's the same idea, right? It's the idea of like, do you want to be a good player on a bad team that sees play, or do you want to be a
good player amongst a lot of good players?
I mean, when people ask me like, what Overwatch League team would you like to play for? I say New York Excel.
Oh my god, dude! Oh my god, this means absolutely nothing. Like, I remember
that's the bandwagoner.
What?
Yeah, but sitting on the bench doesn't do anything. Like,
well, I'd win.
Exactly.
Yes, but so would I bandwagoning. You're just getting paid for that shit.
Oh, Yiska, you get the big boo.
I don't think you can call him out if you're just gonna be like, I'm just a fan of whoever wins.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with like, what kind of self-conception as a player do you have? Because by the way, I think we're underselling what Atlanta could be with just 2 or 3 sales. Like, free up resources by selling Daco.
Half of your roster, by the way, like half of your
I don't even
roster.
think you need 2 to 3. I think 2 to 3 is a lot of moves. I think you could make 1 to 2 and still be head and shoulders.
Yes.
Yeah, but like Daco and Nevix should probably command about the same, even though I don't think it's warranted. I think Nevix is even better than Daco.
I think he's a steal.
And then get a flex support. Okay, the Zarya is still a problem. I would have liked to have that decision once you had to you replaced a friend and then have that discussion. But I think there was or still is an opportunity there for them to become at the very least one of the top 12 teams, so they get into the play-ins. I think even better possibly.
I'd rather use a DPS than a flex support. I think Dogman provides a lot to this team, especially like emotionally. From listening to his communication in the stage 1 playoffs, like he was the most encouraging and the best teammate on the stage, and I think that helps this team a lot, especially if you have players that tilt. But I don't like where their DPS is at, and I would like perhaps an off tank, like you say. Nevix would be good, but also another DPS to sort of complement this roster. And then Popo is really good, Masa's really good, you know.
On the topic of Atlanta's DPS, have you, and we haven't seen him play a lot of DPS, but one of the more exciting picks that I thought coming into the league was Erster. What have you been a fan? Have you been converted? What are your thoughts?
So people rave about Erster, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't know a lot about him.
Fair enough.
I will say this.
Not a lot of people do, to be fair.
It's true. That's true.
Joe and I casted
Chinese
contenders together. We were there those 4 a.m. nights to watch Erster play multiple contender seasons over and over on Broadcast GG. So, yes, to be fair. I mean,
again, there's a lot of Overwatch. You got to go out of your way to find it. You know, he is a player that could be interesting, and hopefully if we can see more DPS, Atlanta has a good shout there. But we're seeing a little bit, you know, the weird boosted Junkrat on Temple has been popping around. I think he provides a good shout for that as well. So just be on the lookout, I'd say. And if you're not converted, just be prepared, I'd say.
No, it's just like I don't just know enough about him to where I can speak on him. You know, I don't want to be disingenuously hyping. I've heard a lot of talent hyping up Erster, and I'm all for that. But personally, I just don't know much about him. I do want to deflect a bit and scapegoat myself a bit here, because when I produce the game, like in the production, there's a different mindset from analyzing the game and trying to predict the game for our production.
That's true.
And so I'm a bit upset this year because I feel like I've lost my edge when it comes to analyzing a bit, because I don't have time to like
really get into the nitty gritty. Yeah, I hear you.
And so like after the games, and also we have so many games, so they just blend together sometimes. So it's like when people ask me like, oh, what did you think about the way Super approached the neutral in this map specifically? And I'm like,
you give me a little bit more there, because there's a lot of games in this mind bank. I gotta it's
like, oh, he swung a bit and he had his shield up, you know. Good to me, you know. So
on
when
that
it comes
topic,
to Erster, I just haven't observed him enough to like appreciate.
That's fair. Are you on the train of adopting with the whole neutral phenomenon? I've been somebody that's followed a lot of other esports, so the neutral is a game that kind of comes from the fighting game kind of community, and bringing it over at Overwatch. Has that been something that you found solace in trying to explain it to people, using this term in this game in particular? Is it something that you're excited to see the continuation of?
Yeah, I mean, I just find it a very easy word to use to describe for what it describes. Yeah, because a lot of the times when I was playing professionally as well, it's like, especially on control maps, it's like, how do you execute the first fight? Like, how do you use because then you have no ultimates, so it's about ability usage in that regard. So it's like, where do you jump for positioning? How do you use your Winston bubble? That kind of stuff. And I think the neutral is a great way to just describe those kind of fights. So I'm all for it. Yeah, sure.
Like it.
I want to move on to the next thing because we've got a couple points,
Sure.
and then
Yes,
I want to
sorry.
make I want Reinforced to make some predictions on the show
Oh,
because that's
no.
my favorite part. We'll see if he can redeem himself from his power rankings. I'm just kidding. All right, Dallas Fuel and LA Gladiators are kind of right now, at least on the desk, the vibe kind of is Dallas Fuel and LA Gladiators are teams that are vying for that number 4, number 5 spot, like kind of eking into the top 4 in Overwatch League. Reinforced, I'd love to know, number 1, do either of those teams deserve to be in that top 4 contention here for stage 2? And then in your opinion, who do you think is better overall as a team?
Yes, I definitely say both of those teams go there. I'd say Sideshow is a bit more hot on the Dallas Fuel than I am. But I'm a bit scared of the Dallas Fuel because it feels like this year's LA Valiant. They're like super consistent.
That's a really interesting.
People will like sort of underrate
That's
them
true.
because they don't necessarily have amazing star players. It's like when I think of AKM, I'm like super talented, hit scan, has some great pop-off moments, great soldier play, Widowmaker stuff like that, you know. But I don't think of him as Carpe or Prophet. And that's decay in my mind. I don't care if Yiska disagrees with me here. I sort of buy into the decay hype a lot. And so I sort of like the LA Gladiators because they have that superstar effect where it's like,
Definitely.
they're a good all-around team. And then they have Decay,
Yes.
who's amazing individually.
I agree.
But because Dallas Fuel doesn't have that, it's harder, like emotionally. There must be some like psychological condition here where because they don't have like a superstar player, it's just mentally harder for you to appreciate their skill or like their peak potential in that regard because they win through teamwork and execution of tactics. They don't win through just overpowering people with individual skill. And so that's why I'm leaning LA Gladiators, but I would not be surprised if the Dallas Fuel just surprise everyone.
They do have an easy. I will say they after this week they play Vancouver and they play Seoul. Both Vancouver is
If
going to
they
be a
beat
hard
Seoul.
match. So yes, that's going to be a great look for them. But then they go home. They play in Dallas with the home stand. I think they renamed it, and they're playing Valiant and they play Houston. Both very very easy matches at home. Should be great for them. Then they play Florida to close out the stage.
Yeah.
This should be a stage playoff berth
Yeah.
easily for them.
That's the cool part about this because no matter what happens, we will probably see them stage playoffs and then
Yeah.
get it.
We'll get to have a better feeling about them because I'm still not sure. I think they'll get there. I just don't know how far they're going to go in the stage playoffs. I haven't been sold just yet.
Yeah. By the way, about the LA Gladiators thing, I completely agree on DK. Like I said before the season, watching Decay and also sort of like his career, this guy has been nuts. I think since Apex season 3 or 2 even.
Yes, three.
3. Yeah, and he honestly gave me Prophet and Fleta vibes at times.
Kid's crazy good.
So I know some people aren't convinced of his Genji. I think it's just not as flashy and possibly not as effective because let's face it, like Prophet's Genji is also not flashy. It's just very effective. Right, so there's certainly always
that. But yeah.
I mean, not that they get to play it at all, but yeah, depending on what the meta does, I think Gladiator is certainly a team that grows from that because yes, they have superstar potential, and then
that's a franchise player right there.
Yeah.
And we had Depay on here. And he tried to like, oh, this is an 18-year-old kid and whatever. So, right. I got to get a package real quick.
We even knew this. So props
Yes,
to Yiska, by the way. He told us ahead of time. He's like, I might have to get up ahead of and get a package. I don't know what it is. I hope it's something great.
Is it? Did you send him something?
No, I wish I sent him something.
One small factoid that I do want to talk about with
let's
Decay
do
is,
it.
funnily enough, he came from Kongdu Uncia, right? From before he was on Panthera, he was on Uncia. And if you go even farther back, Birdring was on Kongdu Uncia originally. So it's funny that they had two pretty prolific players
you
for
can
their
put
time.
that in your 50-page thing.
Put that in your
for free.
document.
for free.
But there again, you saw Bird Ring fall off, so I don't want to prescribe that same kind of theme around Decay because I think he's very young. I think they have a very, very talented player on their hands, and it's just funny to see that old Apex Season 3 Konglu Uncia lineup. Like they had some killers on that squad.
It's really fun to go back and look at those. I think I'm gonna go on another tangent. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No. This is what this is for.
All right, camera's ready. Let's go.
The second name of this podcast, by the way, Wild Tangents.
Yeah.
I love going back on like Wikipedia and like looking up old rosters, you know, because there's a lot of good memories and a lot of great players. And my favorite team in Overwatch, which I find just bonkers, and no, not the team bonkers, they were horrible, but a team that I find so fascinating and we don't get to talk about really is Cyclones.
Oh,
what the fuck was up with that team? They were amazing at triple DPS for like 4 months, and then all their players just vanished. Boombox, you know, successful. Everyone else, Jonik. Poof.
Yep.
All their players are like forgotten about. How they were like the second best or third best team in Europe with Reunited at the time, and now all their DPS players are just gone. I'm like flabbergasted. I'm like, what happened to this team? Because I played versus those guys and they were fucking amazing, and now they're all just gone. So that was a small tangent on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was it at Takeover 2 that they had to have like a stand-in, and then the org like there was like then they got dropped? Like, was that one of their?
I believe it was Takeover 2. Yeah,
United went to Korea to boot camp. They didn't like their flex support. I think it was a Russian flex support, Rubicon or something like that. No,
I think
it was Rubicon.
Right,
yeah, and they were like, like 2 weeks ahead of Takeover 2, we're going to poach Boombox from the second best team in Europe. And then they got another flex support to play for Cyclones. Mosasa left for another team or something. I don't know.
And then they had to have their manager step in.
He went to Alica's team.
Yes.
Laser Kittens.
That's an L. That's an L.
And so the coach had to play main tank. And this legendary team, who was honestly the second best team in Europe, like they were on par with United and Rogue, two legendary old European teams. They were on par with those guys. And they just fell flat because they had to play with a coach and a standing flex support. That's honestly my favorite team in Overwatch history almost. It's
I remember the hype being pretty like big around them, but yeah, they kind of definitely brought up the fact that they were kind of poached through. Was that one of the only, and again, I could be misremembering, but was that like the one of the only bigger events that they were participating in? Did they participate in like
there were no events?
So that was their one chance. Well, true. Yeah, you're right.
That's like we did some online tournament for Misfits. And I was like, I was making big salaries just playing online tournaments. I was like, this is pretty cool. So there was no tournaments.
Cyclones rebranded, right? They were Cyclones before, or some version of like
then
the
they're
word
like
Cyclones,
org dropped
and then the
them.
org dropped them, so they changed to Cyclones.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically. That was a tangent for you.
That was man, just so like
Overwatch history.
There's actually competitive Overwatch history now. Like I remember, like watching Takeover 2 and being like, there's not really any history to Overwatch. It's kind of like this weird thing, and now we're in Overwatch League Season 2. The game's been out for, I don't know, like 4 years now probably, and we've got this like history.
Does it mildly tilt you reinforce that people think that the game's only been competitive for 2 years?
Not as hard as other people. There are some people that I work with that love their old narratives, etc. And perhaps I should, considering I was relevant back then.
I mean, you were a player.
Yeah, but I'm also like, I can understand how we didn't know what the fuck we were doing back then. And now we're building history with legit coaches and strategies and tactics. But we had to get here somehow.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit on the fence where I'm like, don't discredit everything I did and how good the teams were that I was on, you know. But at the same time, we didn't have a coach and we didn't know what we were doing. But but no, sorry, I take that back. I won't say we didn't know what we were doing. Wins, I have to give credit to Wins. He was ahead of his time in Overwatch. He had so many good philosophical ideas. Might not have understood how Lucio was played, but because of him,
Can't win
Rogue was the best team in the world for like 2-3 months. So I will give him that credit.
For sure.
He knew what the fuck he was doing based on
he has some hot takes, and I can respect somebody coming out there and voicing their opinion. But there are times where he just says some shit that I'm like, I've never really thought it that way. And I'm like, okay, Wins, I see you out there. You still got it. You still seeing the game.
We were the best team for a reason. But yes, he has some mistakes. So it's my take on that.
Fair enough. Well, there's one more thing. I want to touch on this very, very briefly for a second. NYXL have not dropped a map through 4 matches in stage 2.
Yeah.
I really overall, I want to know, Reinforced, what's your thoughts on that? Is this an NYXL team rebounding from kind of a pretty embarrassing loss against Seoul in the playoffs? Or is this just par for the course based on the teams that they played? It hasn't been the most exciting beginning of the stage. What's your thoughts on NYXL right now in stage 2?
So not taking stage 1 playoffs into account, they haven't lost a regular season map since week 3 in stage 1.
Damn. Yeah.
They take it a lot more seriously this year around, I would say. Last year, they were like, oh, it's map 4. I feel like Vancouver does that too.
Yes.
When like map 4s, they're like,
trying to break out the Genji. Huxall, go ahead.
Yeah.
But I think New York Excelsior are like feeding from the energy of Vancouver Titans, and they're like, we're going to win every fucking map, and we're going to put our foot down. And I think it's really good for the league, and it's good for New York Excelsior. So as long as they don't fuck up in play, it's really impressive how dominant they are. And Shock as well. Like Vancouver, Shock, and New York, they all just dumpster their opponents. Like no hesitation. It's like, oh, we're going to fuck around on map 4. No, it's like, no, we're going to hold your spawn on Gibraltar. It's like Shock has done that 2 times in a row. Yeah. It's like they just demoralize their opponents, and it's so impressive. So, I'm all for it.
Dude, that is why stage playoffs are so dope and should be valued higher by everyone, basically. Because we now have a system where these teams can avoid each other, and we can have 3 or 4 perfect stages, theoretically, right? So for them to then converge in the stage playoffs and then actually fight out who the best team is super dope, and also should have even more impact on what you think is the best team in Overwatch than last year, I think.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think map differential as a whole, I think people are getting more respect for how it helps them in the season as well. Like last year, we saw that seeding can determine a lot. And even in the stage playoffs, we saw that seeding can, map differential can determine the seeding and contribute to your overall success a lot more. And so even though we have fewer matches, and there's been some controversy in the past about, there's too small of a sample size to determine who the top 8 teams are every stage. You gain some more respect, especially the teams competing. They gain a lot more respect for the map differential and what every map means. So, I enjoy that. I think that's really fun. Like LA Gladiators sit at 4-0, but their map differential is +8.
Right.
New York's is +15.
Yeah.
It's almost twice the map differential.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So totally agree. Okay. Yeah. NYXL. Let's go. Let's talk about this next week coming up, though. There's a couple of games that I want to talk about, or matches that I want to talk about, and I want some people to make some predictions here, because what kind of Overwatch League-based podcast would we be if we didn't make some predictions on the show? And so if you are watching on video, I do have the submitted emotes for Yiska and Joe. By the way, Reinforced, looking good, by the way. Looking good in that little in your you look really good with that headset on, man. It's just like, I don't know if it's a natural thing for
do you hate to see us?
What?
Is that your way to tell him that you hate his ears? Like, just walk around the mall, like, with your headset on. Looks so dope, dude.
Come on.
This is
Yiska.
what we deal with on a daily
Let's
basis
get
with
here.
this guy.
By the way,
I appreciate your
I got it though. Yeah.
I am entertained. That's all.
I have in-ear monitors. I wear these big things because I don't like my ears, but I like.
You want another
I've
tangent?
never seen.
You want to talk about
I've
it?
we
never
go.
seen Johnny's ears. All right,
Therapy
yeah, go ahead.
session.
I looked through KickedTripod's streaming gear, and I was like, "Oh, he has $600 headset." You know, like holy shit, that must be good. And I look at this description box. It has 1 review and it's 1 star. And I'm like, hope it was worth the money. You know, 1 review, 1 star.
You can't actually buy them from Amazon, okay? For
Oh.
a reason. At least you couldn't at the time. So I'm just saying.
Maybe skewed.
By the way, I'm
Maybe
not telling
skewed.
people to buy $600 headphones, but when it comes down to being able to put a pair of headphones on your head for 12 hours a day,
That's true.
I'm
Sometimes, yeah.
my headphones actually broke, so I'm not as happy anymore. I've had these
Oh.
for 3 years, and like 12 hours a day for 3 years, and they broke, and I submitted a ticket this morning. So I'll let you know.
Cool.
I'm sure you care a lot about.
Be sure to tweet that. Yes. Send me a DM.
Yeah,
Let me know
for
how it goes.
sure. I'll let you know how it goes. We'll I don't know. We'll make an Instagram
Yeah.
story about it. Yeah, it'll be.
I sort of regret going on this tangent now.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Feels real good. All right. So let's talk
Titan
about
fuel, huh?
So yeah, so Titans Fuel. So here's the thing, right? I knew when we talked about the Dallas Fuel being a potential, top 4, top 5 team, that this would probably gauge a lot on how worthy they are of being considered in that top 3 with to what Titans, Excelsior, Shock, right? So, and we're gonna kind of go around the horn here. Anybody like the question is, does anyone think the Fuel will beat the Titans? But in general, is there a world where any of you would place a bet against the Vancouver Titans against the Dallas Fuel?
Let me see these
this
maps.
week.
If you
There
give
is
me
a
10 to
war.
1.
There is a world, yes. Is that world this world?
Dude, this world started very well in that sense with Huxell going off. If you need to bench him, maybe. Like that is something I will consider in my percentages now.
So in other words, no, nobody would pick Vancouver
no.
Titans over the Fuel.
Oh, Vancouver.
Other way.
Another
around.
way around. I don't
I
think
would
we'd
pick
take the
Vancouver, yeah.
fuel over the Titans.
Yeah.
I think it's more interesting the percentages. Like,
Yeah.
on Winston's
For
lab,
sure.
how much would you give Dallas? Like, I could give them like 30.
Yeah, I could say 30 after last week.
30 is good.
I think they're being a little bit playful, I'd say. I won't say sandbagging. I'd say something tells me that they're not taking every match as seriously as they should. And they could get caught, much in the same way they did last stage when they went to Game 5 against Guangzhou. Granted, that was a completely different Guangzhou. I don't even think they're in the same level anymore. And even, stumbling against Chengdu. Like, I don't think they were prepped. I don't think they were ready. I think they kind of slept on those teams. Are they sleeping on Dallas? I don't know. I think they need a loss. Is this the time they get that loss? I don't think so.
So Dallas Fuel are 2-0, 6-1-1, plus 5 map differential. Basically, they've dropped the map. So yeah. We're not going to say. Don't even say
It was
it.
against Toronto, and then that Paris match was not clean. I'll say, like, they beat Paris. I don't think it was as clean as they would have liked.
I will say I made like a small Twitter thread the other week about playing with self-confidence and how much it matters. And I will say, if Dallas Fuel play without hesitation and they play self-confident this series, I could see it going to map 5. If they hesitate for one bit,
Sure.
or start to question their strategy, or if they start to question their tactics, or start to question their own skill going up against Vancouver, I think they're done for. If OG goes in there and he's ready to fuck things up, I think he very well could take it to map 5.
Yeah. It's
Bless you.
interesting. It's interesting how he said it. Like, in my mind, Vancouver Titans is like the Gurren Lagann of teams, where Bumper is just like,
so many people hate you right now, by the way. Yeah.
Jumps into that, like into the front line and just, like if you have someone that, I think, especially if there is a way you're the initiator, I think that like you inspire confidence then
definitely
in others, right? So having like a super aggressive tank, even though, you know, statistically that might not work out, you could even make that argument for last year for Fraggy that this was one of the reasons why that worked.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think the style of beating Vancouver is fighting fire with fire, that you have to kind of match them and almost be more, beat them on their own tempo and be more aggressive? Or do you think there is a way to kind of
counter
jujitsu them into and counter them? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the best case is to out tempo them and just play fast?
We don't know. We would know if they played New York yet. That is the problem for me. Like those are like the styles clashing. So then you would have a definitive answer, right? If that works or not, because that's like, you know, the two karate schools, and like if they never meet, and that is on NYXL, then. Yeah,
what
like
we don't know these analogies? You're so good at analogies, and you give us Gurren Lagann and karate schools.
I like the second one. The first one was a little bit niche.
Gurren Lagann and karate schools? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
What were the two dojos?
Input, output, dude.
Sure.
It's like the village hidden in the leaf.
There we go.
Now we're hidden in the sand.
Yep.
Okay. Yiska. All right.
Full weeb.
Jeez.
No, that's what we need.
Jeez. All right. All right. I want to go on to the second one, though. I want to talk about London Spitfire versus Boston Uprising.
This is where I think we're going to differ.
All right. So Boston Uprising are currently in stage 2-1, 8-7 map differential, while London Spitfire are 3-0, 8-2-2, coming off of a really, I would say, a weak stage 1. Reinforce, is there a world? Do you pick the Uprising Spitfire? Like, who do you have your money on this week? And how much money did you bet? No, just kidding. But seriously.
I bet $1,000 on the London Spitfire.
$1,000.
I don't know what the relative amount is, so it sounds like a lot of money.
1,000 scrim bucks. 1,000 scrim bucks.
1,000 scrim bucks, yeah. I'm really buying into the London Spitfire, honestly. I'm bullish on the London Spitfire. I'm really happy seeing them go back to a bit more Winston and a bit more DPS compositions. So, I mean, I'm on that train. Am I a London Spitfire fanboy? Not really. But I am very happy to see them sort of return to their, I was going to say good form, but they were very up and down in 2018 as well. But they look better nonetheless. It seems like they're peaking in their roller coaster throughout 2019. So I think they're going to climb to the top, and then they're sort of going to come down crashing in like stage 3 or 4 again.
Oh,
and
then
peak for playoffs.
Be the reverse of last season, where they peak early and then they clash or play out.
I remember watching one of Yiska's videos, which was like about waves or sea level rising or something like that, you know? Like London Spitfire is the wave, and I'm riding it right now.
Yes.
And then they're gonna come crash.
All right, fair enough.
You know which wake never broke this season is already riding high? Profit, dude. Like, I need to point it out again. This guy has not slumped a single game again. It's nuts. This kid can do every fucking thing. Like, I just need to set this marker so people still believe when I eventually make the greatest of all time argument, because I think we're getting there slowly but surely, depending on how high you weight Overwatch League results. Of course, his career has not been as long as someone like AKM or whatever, but yeah, this kid's still nuts on everything. It's unreal.
I think he's the greatest.
So, Yiska, are you going Spitfire?
Yes.
Fair enough. Joe, what about you, man?
I think I would be much more willing to give London a shout if they played guard. I think guard's been tragically missed in this lineup. I think they would be overall better if they played guard over Birdring. I still think Goats is the default, and I would wager that the better Goats team in most of these matches are winning. And I think Boston is the better Goats team. I do agree that London could throw Boston some different looks. Are those looks strong enough to throw Boston off their game? I don't think so. I agree that Gesture having a return to his wheelhouse on Winston was something that I praised them for, or used as a narrative point to put them forward. But I haven't seen them succeed as much as I was hoping they would.
See, part of my argument in saying that it's Spitfire is also that, okay, I have to be fair. I haven't given RCK a fair look in Boston yet. But I think it will ultimately, like when people say that trade worked out for both parties, I don't think it will eventually for Boston. I think that might become a problem.
Works, though,
I'm coming around with them, man. Yeah. I like at some point something's got to break with them, and if this is the trade that breaks the system, possibly, but it doesn't seem like the players matter. I think they can just they're. I'm buying in slowly but surely. They surprise me at every turn, and
sure,
I don't think that RCK is going to be that one move that like somehow changes this whole thing up, because you didn't see it happening last year. I mean, look at the same narrative that we post for them. Poop team. They had a couple good players, wasn't going anywhere. Same kind of thing happened this year, and they're still doing it, and they're doing it with different players at every turn. Like, when is it gonna break?
I gotta keep it moving. It moving for a second. I'm going London Spitfire here. The biggest difference, Uprising.
Wow, I'm the only person. Okay.
Yep, as always, right? So Uprising barely defeat Atlanta Reign in week 1, and London 4-0s. Like, that gives them the edge because Yiska, you. All right,
dude, no. Look at Joe's face. It's like he's the only one going against the grain. It's like, I feel uncomfortable. Is this an edgy opinion? It's like pouring salt over a slug, dude. Like.
So I don't agree with you. I think that overall London have been playing better. Boston Uprising have taken all three matches against subpar teams to game 5. Spitfire have not. Like, I don't know. Like, again, right? So you have to look at matchups. You have to look at map pool. I'm too lazy. So we're going to, change that up a little bit. And we're going to...
John, I'm not going on a tangent, but I will say the maps are really interesting for this matchup. I won't go on a tangent, and we don't need to talk about it, but the maps are interesting. It's Busan, Paris, Kings Row, Junkertown.
Why is that interesting?
Oh, because they're all trash. They're all trash. Oh my god. That's 3 trash maps. Unreal.
No, that was not my point at all.
It's my point now.
I think we'll go to game 5. I think we'll go to map 5. Anyway, I just get the impression that John wants to move on, and so I'm like fearfully talking.
You don't have to be fearfully talking about anything. If there's anything fearful about this one here, it's just Yiska's ability to combust. I think is the only thing that I'm afraid of on this podcast. Is Yiska, every once in a while is just like boom. You just don't know what
these things.
Yeah. You never know when it's coming. We still have quite a bit to go through. I do very quickly here. Philadelphia Fusion, Houston Outlaws. So Fusion Outlaws are like, you've got the narrative that Outlaws searching for an identity. Fusion kind of like fighting to stay relevant here. Reinforce. Who do you got in this matchup?
Wait, ask someone else. I need to look at the maps. This is too close.
All right, fair enough. Joe, who do you take here?
I did a small preview where I talked about this pretty in depth. The kind of gist of it is that I think that Houston is rebuilding internally, with the focus onto Arhan instead of Jake. I do think that they are showing some very positive counter comps, especially on Busan. I liked their Sanctuary Orisa strat.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that was Vancouver feeding into them. Like they mentioned on Oversight, there was a couple just 1v1s that Vancouver were taking that I don't think they needed to. that will probably play a hand in Houston possibly taking an early lead on Control, which again, I don't think provides too much prediction power in terms of how the series will go. So I think you could give Houston map 1, and then I think it's Philly the rest of the way because Houston internally is restructuring. At least that's my take on the outside looking in. So I think this is Philly 3-1.
So in this 6,000 word, that 6,000 word novel there, Philadelphia.
That's me.
Yiska, what about you, man? Where are you at? Fusion Outlaws.
Okay, really quick side tangent. I think it's very important in Overwatch to talk about how teams specifically improved. And I've read this book, and ever since then, I'm convinced of the power of trajectories. And I have to say, and by the way, I'm trying to eventually get power rankings out in the terms of who improved the most this week, for instance. I think that's a very valuable lesson. So I think Houston actually looked very good against Titans. Now, Houston has been a team that sort of plays up to their opponent historically.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I can trust that, but if they can hold that level, especially here's the thing. They were pretty average on the first map of King of the Hill, right?
Yes.
Like if you look at the stats,
won quite heavily on Sanction. Yes.
And then they are statistically very bad in map 5s. Now, by improving their King of the Hill performance across the board, I think that really helps them, especially in this series. Like, if they can get over their nerves just by effect of having a very good King of the Hill in general, strategies or whatever, I think that might be their first map 5 win of this season.
So
I think Busan, I would want Busan late. If I was Houston, I want Busan late because that seems to be where they have some pretty key strategies kind of in the pot, kind of cooking up. I think Busan early sets them up. I think if they draw, because again, I'm not entirely too sure how map 5 is. It's just the one control map that hasn't been played. I don't know that they have much in the pot when it comes to the other maps.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia will gain momentum throughout the series and eventually overpower. I think that Anubis and Icon are going to be pretty rough for Houston.
Yep.
So I'm giving.
Yeah, I'm in the same Philadelphia Fusion. I've got to go with here. So yeah, it's a tight one for me. But in the end, Joe and Yiska both have a lone pick there. So rough, I guess.
Yiska's not wrong in predicting Houston. Could very well win.
Yeah,
He might be wrong. We will find out if he is wrong. But
He's that type of guy.
he is logical in his arguments for Outlaws for sure. So
I'm just scared of how bad Philly are looking, but
That's true.
sure, this is the week where they really have to turn it around. And as much as like I don't look at games against Outlaws as a bellwether for like how good your team is doing,
But that's kind of a must win.
they are like, this is the match for me. That is our Philadelphia Fusion, a top 10 team or a bottom 10 team, and I look at as Houston at like kind of like that bellwether for like.
Yep.
If you can't beat Houston, I can't ever put you in the top 10.
Yeah, Luke keeps tweeting me like, why am I not higher in your power rankings? And I'm like, because you're not good enough. It's a reason.
There it
Boom.
is.
Come on,
All
Dave.
right.
Gonna win versus Outlaw.
So before we close out the show here, we do have one more segment. It's called Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is. Ka-ching! I promise there will be a sounder one day. But the idea is very shortly, you don't get you can't do
no 6,000 word essays.
You can't do a
Right,
Joe
cool.
or a Yiska where it's just like, well, if you take in all these 97 variables, I give them a 3% chance. Like, no, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to put your money where your mouth is. And we're going to talk, we're going to take this very seriously, Yiska, specifically you. I'm looking at you. You've been a troublemaker of this show. Not having it.
My bad.
Not having
My
it.
bad.
So I've got 4 overall questions for you all. Overall, I'm going to have Reinforce, as he's our guest, go first here. Do NYXL drop a map in week 3? Yes or no? No. I love it.
I feel like I'm going to be alone on
and
this.
I'm going to qualify here. Do they tie any maps?
Yes.
That's okay. No money there. That's just the bonus. You
Okay.
double. You double if you get it right. You don't double if you get it wrong. Lots of scrim bucks. So
Staying away from the essays.
yeah, exactly. NYXL does not drop a map. All right. Joe, does NYXL drop a map in week 3?
I'll say yes.
Okay. Yiska.
No.
No. All right. I love it. So 2-1. NYXL does not drop a map in week 3. Very excited to see what happens. All right. Question number 2. Does LA Valiant get their second win of the season over Washington Justice? Yiska.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Johnny.
Oh no! Don't do it, Johnny. Don't do it. You know
Yes.
you don't want
Yes.
Ah.
Yes, they do. LA
It'd be such a
Valiant
hot take.
it. Would.
3-0. LA Valiant get their second win over the for the season for the Washington Justice. All right. Here we go. Johnny, coming to you. Do the Titans fall to fuel or uprising this week? Do we see
No.
that first loss? No. Joe.
No.
Yiska.
No.
All right. 3-0. No. Titans go on undefeated. Last question. Do the Florida Mayhem find their first win this week against either Shanghai Dragons or Houston Outlaws? Yiska, going to you.
No.
Johnny says no. Mayhem.
No.
Still winless. Yiska.
No.
Joe.
No.
All right.
Here's another fun fact for you. If you count out Florida Mayhem's wins over Shanghai Dragons last year, the Shanghai Dragons could, after this week, have more franchise wins than the Florida Mayhem against the rest of the
Ooh.
league.
I wasn't ready for that
After
one.
going 0-40.
I was not
in
ready for
season
that
one.
one. That
Wow.
was, ooh. That's
That
rough.
hurts.
That hits. Like moment of silence. Just moment
That
of
hurts.
silence. Yeah, that's rough.
Oof.
Jeez. Oof. All right. Wow.
It's a good time.
That's a good note to end it on, by the way. We gotta get out of here. Reinforce, man. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
It was
for
a really
coming
fun
on.
podcast. It was a really good podcast. I enjoyed
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
We'll keep a seat warm for you anytime you want to come on the show.
it. Ooh, nice.
Yiska warms the seats, so
Yes, I'm not the bench warmer. Nice.
you know.
It's actually really hot in LA, so I'd like a cold seat if that's possible.
Joe Cold's the seats. He's the night.
I do like my AC high, I will say.
Lukewarm, I would say.
All right, yeah. Just hit
I
me in
don't-
my non-existent spine.
My,
I understand. Get it
My
in.
seats do not have temperatures. They just have percentages of warm and cold, and it's about 55-45.
We've already established that you don't sit down, right?
No, because he has that standing desk that he talks about every week.
Yeah.
Not every week. I usually sit down.
Not every
See,
week. I know.
I was intending to make a toilet joke, but we would go with the safe one, yeah.
All right, no toilet jokes here. All right, so Reinforce, before we get out of here, though, please take a moment, tell everybody where they can find you, any other farewell messages, anything like that you want to get out to the listeners and viewers this week.
I just want to thank you guys for having me on. I think it was really entertaining. I love being part of stuff like this. You can find me on Twitter at Reinforce, the way it's spelled in the dictionary. No fluff, nothing fancy. It's literally the word in the dictionary. If you're unsure how to spell it, pull up the dictionary, try to Google it. It will help you spell the word correctly. And then you can find me on Twitter. I'm not going to promote my own podcast. Because
You should.
You should.
Should I?
You should.
But I'm on the podcast already.
It's okay.
I don't.
You can listen
It's
to
a
my
good
podcast, Positive Reinforcement, the Overwatch podcast, where I give the Overwatch community
Great
a
name,
treat.
by the way. Second best name.
This week I had Sideshow on, and he gave me all his hot takes, like Dallas Fuel being a top 4 team. So go check that out. Go give it a listen. It's only like 30-40 minutes every week, so you can listen to both podcasts
Yeah,
realistically.
not mutually
Yes.
exclusive at all.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
So
Share the love.
check that out, and I'll have some more guests on. Next time I might pick Brent's brain, and we'll see what he has to say. I haven't invited him. I just put him on the spot, and that was a bad idea. Moving on. That's it. Follow me on Twitter. That's good. And on
There it
Instagram. I want to reach 10K followers on Instagram.
There it is.
At Reinforce Owl, which I changed to before I got fired, and then I got rehired, so I could keep the Instagram name the same. Great stuff.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I will say, by the way, I just want you to know, totally enjoy Positive Reinforcement.
Thank you.
Great
Good,
piece of
good.
content. Love seeing more really good competitive Overwatch content because there's not.
I feel like
enough,
there's a room in the Overwatch community for Swedish accents, so I'm trying to fill it.
There is, and you
Sure.
sound really good on that podcast.
All
You've
our,
got like
all our
it's
players and coaches are doing shit, so I'm trying to
positive
perform.
reinforcement. To me is like the only ASMR competitive
Default
Overwatch podcast.
oh,
It's
to reinforce.
good. It's good on the ear holes. So make sure.
Okay.
Yeah, just the ear
Oh
holes.
yes, holds. That's why you have those on. Makes sense.
Oh, yes. So, anyways, sounds really good. Make sure to go follow, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. Joe, what's coming up for you this week?
I'm going to be breaking down the Chinese Contenders playoffs as well as potentially backing up my hot take that I think the British Hurricane are the best contenders team in the world at the moment. So those might be coming.
Fair enough. Yiska, what about you? What's coming up?
So next week I have a vacation week for the most part. So I plan to get thinking over starting again. I said that three tries ago, by the way. But I want to stream Witcher. We'll see.
Ooh.
Three.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, you've got your new graphics card. So exciting
Yep.
stuff. As for me, nothing super exciting going on, but make sure to follow me everywhere at KickedTripod. Make sure to follow the show at tactical_crouch and search for Tactical Crouch on anywhere where you can listen to podcasts or watch videos on YouTube because we're everywhere. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This was an incredible live episode. Twitch chat, you guys behaved. Good job. I know it's not easy for you all to do, so really appreciate it. That's going to do it for episode 28. We will be back next week for episode 29. I have no idea who's going to be on. We might have some stuff changing, some stuff in the works, so definitely stay tuned on that. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.